You're listening to Real Estate and Bourbon. Whether you like it neat or on the rocks, you're in the right place. And now your host, Dawn Roy.
Oh my goodness, my lovelies. Thank you for joining me again for another episode of Real Estate and Bourbon. And have we got a goodie for you? My dear, dear friend, Beth Pretty is here, and I'm in love with her. You're just so wonderful. And we'll get into how we know each other. But Beth is a realtor here in the Richmond market, and we met at Keller Williams, and I'm so thrilled that she is joining me today.
Well, I'm honored to be on your podcast. I have a lady crush. I love your podcast.
There you go.
I watch all the episodes. So if you're not subscribed, you need to push that button right now.
Push that button.
Yes, because she's fabulous and she has wonderful guests. And,
Yes.
I just love her podcast.
Yes,
so.
we always had the best.
It's so weird because it's like two of my clients,
Yes.
but not really together, as in like, on a team.
Correct.
So it's very...
Totally different brokerages.
Totally
but
different.
Here we can be friends.
Well, and I think to me that is some of my best friends in the real estate space have nothing to do with the brokerage I'm with, or I think that if you limit yourself to that, you're limiting you limit yourself.
Absolutely.
And you limit the reach you can have for your clients, because the stuff we learn from each other is immeasurable. Because whatever test we have to take to get into the business, that's in the rearview mirror. We learn by trial by fire.
Oh, yeah. I mean, what you learn in class, I always say, because I teach that class,
Yes.
I always say it's like learning trigonometry in school. You're never going to use it again.
Right.
It's what you learn on the street in real life, and you need other realtors to help you. You have to learn from their baptism by fire, their
Correct.
mistakes, their wildness,
Correct.
their crazy stories.
Oh, and we have crazy stories.
Speaking of stories, tell me how you guys met.
Well, I was at, let me think back. I was at RE/MAX. I probably was in the business maybe 3 years at the time. And I went over to Keller Williams Midlothian, which is where you are.
Yes.
And when you go to that company, they have a program called Ignite. And especially, if you're only in the business 2-3 years away, you're still a newbie, right? You're still trying to figure your stuff out. So Beth was part of the team that taught that class, and like different people would teach different segments of it, and it was over how long was it? Is it 5 or 6 week?
Oh, it's much.
Is it longer than that?
longer. It's about 15 modules.
Yeah.
That's taught, and it takes you from the beginning. It's to prepare you to have the business, and it's great for any level, but especially brand newbies. But also if you've only been in the business a few years, or if you've been in the business a long time, but you just need to light the fire under your butt.
Right.
This is a great refresh. Yeah. So.
And she taught the seller one. This is the one I remember her the most from. And she taught the seller module. I still use your net sheet to this day. 10 years. So I am in the business 10 plus years now. And the net sheet. So what I mean by that is it's an Excel spreadsheet, and you present this to a seller and you say, listen, these are the potential fees and things that are going to come about in selling your home. And if you give me your payoff or whatever, I can kind of give you an idea of your proceeds. So with that, we can move forward, right? Because a lot of times I'm selling my home to buy another home. Well, if you don't know what your proceeds are and then what you can, they kind of miss that a lot of times. And I still use that sheet to this day.
Wow, I'm honored.
Yeah, I mean, you're the stuff you taught are key and core things that I still use as a realtor.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And
But you're a natural teacher, though. That's your background.
It's my background. I love teaching and love every opportunity to be in the classroom to do that.
Yes.
And what I remember, there's so much I remember about you. And, if all joking aside, I mean, Dawn has an incredible personality, and seriously, watch this podcast if you haven't subscribed yet. But Dawn's personality is incredible. I don't know if you've ever, I don't think they're strangers to you.
Not really.
Yeah.
It's just I haven't met you yet.
Yes, she just hasn't met you yet. She has such an uncanny way of making you feel like family, friend, never foe, and just such a lovely personality and an incredible voice. I can
Oh, no.
remember your singing at some of our Keller Williams events. And,
I did do that.
and thinking, what? Where did that come from? I didn't know about that. And there she is singing. Did you know that, Michael, that she sings?
Yeah, we actually
did a-
played a little something together.
Yeah, but I wouldn't let him.
It would have gone
I would
viral
not let
pretty
him post
quick.
it.
It would have gone viral, but she wouldn't have.
We'll do something another time.
Yeah.
But
Yes. Well, and you would say hold my beer or hold my bourbon because I can't carry a tune at all.
you're so sweet.
But she has a wonderful voice. And so I've always been an admirer of Dawn and am thrilled to be here.
well, I'm so glad you're here. And I want to, before we get too far into this, I want to, the bourbon we're going to profile today. So, and I know that you don't really drink bourbon, and I'm so glad that you don't, because I love to educate people on bourbon, to be honest with you. So this is it's called Eagle Rare. It's their 10-year. It was given to me by just a most precious man who, shout out to my sweet Milton for gifting me this and
Do you
other
wanna
things.
elaborate on
No,
it?
I don't
Okay.
at this point. I
Just
don't.
checking.
We're just gonna
Hi,
let that we're
Milton.
gonna let that just percolate
Okay.
and do stuff. It is a part of the family of Buffalo Trace, which is in a Kentucky distillery. And the minimum age on this bourbon is 10. So this is their 10-year.
So
They
you
make a
just
12. They
10
make a
Oh.
they make a
okay.
17. Yeah, they make other vintages. If you go to Mac McCormick's, I know for sure at his Perham Road location, the Big Whiskey, he has a barrel pick. So he went to
What's that?
the distillery and picked his own barrel.
Oh, I'm already smelling it, you guys.
Can you smell this
I already
thing?
got it. It just hit my
Smell
nose.
that.
Yeah.
I won't be able to smell it. I can't. Like
You
my,
and yeah.
Oh, that smells divine.
And it's it's a beautiful caramel color, and
I love a bourbon ball.
what's like a
It's
sweet
candy-
treat.
Yeah, I love a bourbon ball
Gotcha.
and bourbon slushies. I have a great bourbon slushy recipe.
So
and-
here's to Milton. Thank you, my sweet friend.
yeah.
Mm.
Cheers.
That's what I'm talking. That is some kind of good right there. Woo!
So now your voice is going to get all.
I've got
super
this Lauren
sexy.
Bacall. I've had a dry cough that is completely unproductive and a pain in my rear end for 2 weeks. But
I
I've
think
got
there's
this
a
wonderful.
form of COVID that's not registering because
I don't
I
have
said
the COVID.
twice.
There are things called colds.
I don't know.
just
This
saying.
is like
There's still germs.
there's still
other than
germs,
COVID.
but
Yes.
it's like
Yeah.
I mean,
man,
there's things called the flu. So
this thing like
this is funny. So she has a teaching. She comes from the university background.
Mm-hmm.
I went to MCV. I have a dental hygiene background in dentistry. I was in dentistry for way too long. So a lot of this stuff that people get crazy about with COVID, I'm like,
I'm not saying I'm like that's what it is, but I'm saying like I don't like the way it was and stuff for me last week and stuff. I was like, what the heck is this?
Well, it's funny. Charlie, who's been on the show, who got me into bourbon, I called him and he's like, holy cow, what happened to you? I'm like, I don't feel bad. I just have this smoky, Kirstie Alley sound. And he goes, this is what you're going to do. He goes, bourbon and honey. I said,
Yes.
what? He goes, yeah, you just drink bourbon, put the honey to the side. It'll fix you right up.
But I could see you putting bourbon in tea, like hot tea.
Yes,
I
and
think
making
that
a
would
toddy.
work.
Yeah, it would
Yes.
definitely make it work.
Well, I think this is
As
gonna help
Michael
you.
drinks his tea, as what?
I think this is going to help you.
I
So-
think that it's clear. I feel a clearing
yeah, I feel
of
like
my
it is.
congestion now as we speak.
Yes.
So, I love how intuitive she is to everything. So, a little bit more back. So, and you have started your own podcast. I don't want to forget a moment about making sure we shout out that. So, tell the fine folks how to find you, what it's called.
Will do. So first of all, I'm a newbie in this realm, but it's called Talk Pretty Real Estate Podcast. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Podbean, wherever you
Alexa.
I always forget the Alexa part. So yes, you can find it there. We hope you subscribe to ours. Our podcast is just a little bit different from Dawn, and so I think you should subscribe to both of ours.
Absolutely.
because together you'll be armed with everything you need. So
I love it. And talking about being armed, we've got some crazy shit.
Yes.
You know me, feel the jar.
Yes.
Going on in our industry right now.
We
that
do.
The consumer doesn't see because this is not in the news, but it's in our news. It's in our email chains. It's from our association.
But actually, one of them was in the news last week. Yes.
Yeah.
So it did make news. And I actually I didn't fall victim. I knew better, but I actually have been hit by 2 different scams in the last 3 months.
Unbelievable.
And yesterday was the scam
for the land deals.
Yep, that was in the news yesterday. I actually got the call from a scammer.
This is exciting.
Would you like to hear about what happened?
Yes, I would. So tell
here's
the
the
folks.
thing. Hold on real quick. The only thing that I'm excited about for Beth to tell the story is because she's actually personally been going through some like crazy stuff too. That I'm like, get him, Beth, get him.
Yeah. Well, and no better person to kick your ass than Beth Pretty.
I just know her. And I'm
I will
like,
tell you.
she's down. She's gonna get him.
Well, so for the listening audience, what's happened is, and what we've been made aware of, there are people posing as sellers, primarily of land, raw land, and agents have listed the land, and the seller wasn't the right owner. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. So what was the conversation? What did they say when they called you? What was that? What did it sound like?
Yeah. So, first of all, let me just say they're very sophisticated, and all of those of you who own real estate, all the information is public. It's all in the tax records. So it's very easy for a scammer to grab hold of all of your information, just so you know, and there's nothing you can do about it except be vigilant. So I received the phone call, and it came through Zillow. So it looked like I was getting a lead through Zillow. So, of course, I answered the phone immediately. Hello, Beth Pretty. How can I help you? Oh, excited. And he said, yes, hi, I have some property I want to sell, and I'm interested in you listing it. Well, music to my ears.
Of course.
I'm like grabbing my pad. Fortunately, I had my laptop right there. I pull it up, my tax records ready to go to enter the property. And he says, I said, well, may I have the address? So he gives me the address, and he doesn't realize I'm plugging it into the computer, and I immediately see it's a lot. And of course, I had already
Your
knew
red flag
about
goes up.
Yep, my red flag. My hair stands up. I'm ready to do battle. And I start asking some questions, and he had the full legal name of the owner. And of course,
Was he posing as this owner?
He was posing as the owner. And I said, and of course, most land owners have a different address,
Correct.
right? Listed,
Yes.
because that's where the tax bill goes, is
Right.
to a different address. And I said to him, what's your mailing address? He knew that also. He had that correct. So he knew the actual mailing.
He did his due diligence
He
to look
did.
up the information and be on point with these kind of questions.
Yes, he was prepared for that. So then I quickly looked up that address, because I thought if I could trick him about the subdivision that property's in, then I would know.
How far did he go in his research?
Right, and then I would know for sure whether or not he was legit.
Yeah.
I mean, and he also, when I asked him when could I meet him, he said, I'm not in the country, I'm not available. That's another red flag.
It's like a dating app. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's what Zillow is, like a dating app. And you were getting, catfished.
Yes, very much so. Yes, totally catfished. So I look up the next address, the mailing address, and it's a lot as well.
Get out.
So I said to him, how do you like living in such and such subdivision? Oh, we really like it there. It's great. And I said, oh, are you living in a tent? And he says, what do you mean? And I said, well, there's no house on that lot. Are you living in a tent? Because you're saying you live in that.
Do you have a camper, an RV parked out there?
How's that working out for you? He's like, I don't know what you mean. And I said, okay, fine. What I'm going to need you to do, I'm happy to list this property for you. What I'm going to need you to do is text me your photo ID, please.
Yes.
So I'm going to need that. That's required by law. I said, I want to introduce you to the Patriot Act. and that, you know, your picture ID will be required for the transfer of property. And he said, okay, yes, I will text that to you. And then he hung up and I never heard back from him. So
that, my friends, is how you handle an SOB like that.
yeah, I mean, he was, you could tell he was starting to stutter, and
because you were now putting up roadblocks for him that he wasn't prepared for, because you and I both know there are, you know, and this is no shade on our fellow realtors, but there are people that just because if someone fogs the mirror and raises their hand, they get so excited about.
I've been that person.
I have too. Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you,
last week I might have been that person.
Right, but the due diligence of our association and getting out these communiques and getting out this information to us so that we are, you know, because I'm like, I actually met a gal. And I backed away from it super fast. She posed as, well, she looked too young for how she was saying how old she was. I met her down in Petersburg at a coffee shop. She and her husband wanted to buy a home, but his family had property. And she brought all these tax records of things and wanted me to sell these. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not on these. You don't have the legal right to sell any of this, you know, and I pushed back on her, right? I started and we went back and forth even after that meeting to the point where I just stopped communicating with, listen, you know what I mean? There's enough good business that you and I both do because we're both very highly referral based, right?
Yes.
I do enough business every year. I'm not going to play with the shenanigans, the chicanery, as it were.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
the ambulance chasing, we don't.
Well, I don't. Right. We don't do that anymore. I mean, when you're in the business, you're just like,
right.
Someone wants to do anything, I'm there. You know what I mean? It's kind of sad. And I know you do when you counsel or you teach realtors, and when I mentor realtors, I'm like, listen, we're going to set a foundation for your business first. Because they're always like, how do I get my first transaction? Like, that will come. But we have to set, you know, because I do the Buffini thing. I mean, I'm a referral maker girl. You know, I'm calling my people, sending cards, all the things.
Yep.
And I'm like, that will come, but you have to foundationally set yourself up for success. Because you and I know, I've seen so many Facebook posts where they'll sell their first house, get their first $8,000 check, and they're at the Kate Spade outlet in Williamsburg, blowing it. Yeah. Yes. And then they're calling me 3 months later because they have nothing in the pipeline.
Right.
And they didn't save the one that they got.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm all about setting you up for success, and sometimes they think it takes too long. But I approached my business at the beginning. I became a networker. I purposely sought out people who touch homeowners, and I had coffees, and I met, and I helped them grow their business, whether it be a plumber or an whoever. And I did it very slowly and methodically, and created this foundation that has really been rewarding for me. And I'm more of I just have to. I'm in a relationship with you,
right?
You know what I mean? I mean, I love on my people. Every time I walk out with from the title company with a new buyer, like, they just closed on their first, I was like, you're attached to me forever. You sweet 24-year-old little thing. And they're just like, thank you so much. And they got their Nora Fleming platter. Right? I said, I'm going to be to the house this summer. We're going to drink bourbon on your porch. You're not getting rid of me. You'll hear from me every month. Until I go to Jesus, we're connected. And they're like, that's just wonderful. You know what I mean? That's how I see business, though.
But here's the thing. So many people get into real estate because they think it's fast, great money.
Yes.
Only part of what I just said is true. It can be great money. It is not
But it's not fast.
You have to have a high tolerance for
rejection,
to slow play. It's
right.
a long time it can be a long time to get things going, unless you have family and friends ready to
who are in the middle of they happen to be ready to do a transaction,
right, and they're going to trust you to do it. Then it's going to be a while, probably, to get going.
But that's okay.
Yes,
I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
unless you have $5 in your bank account, then it's
well,
not
and
okay,
maybe this is not the jam for you right now.
It's not.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to be prepared for this.
Like any business, you're not going to go open a Subway or franchise a Chick-fil-A with $5 in your bank.
No,
account.
they're going to make you have $250,000 cash on hand before they even grant you the franchise.
This is the only business where nobody's doing that, looking at your bank account, making sure you're ready to go. You have to self-regulate and make those decisions.
Yes.
Yeah.
I find it interesting how, you know, I mean, it's like you're listening to you. It's just like, it's hearing myself talk, because they want to, and we're bloated, to be honest with you, from a real estate, not me and you, we look fabulous. I'm just saying. Don't you laugh, Michael. A brunette and a blonde. Come on.
Yeah.
This is some happening shit up here.
I told you, it's like blowing my mind.
Do you know what this crazy woman said to me? She says, I want to be on your podcast, but I don't want to, like, you to lose followers. I'm like, what are you talking about? There's no way. I said, you're going to make me gain followers. This is a beautiful thing. But back to my point, we have too many realtors in our association right now. I mean, we ballooned up to almost 8,000 realtors over COVID. It was 8,200. And it was just ridiculous. When I came in, there was maybe 4,500.
Well, let me tell you, I came in 2008. There was 7,200 realtors in 2008. And by 2012, 4,800.
Yeah, that's about the time I hit. Yeah. And that's what was going. And to me, that is balance. Because, to be honest with you, there's only 20% of us doing anything.
Right.
Let's get real. It's the 80-20 rule.
Yes, always.
Thank you, Gary Keller. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's always the truth. Mm-hmm. Only 20% of us are creating 80% of the business. Mm-hmm. Do you know that Michael, you'll love this. NAR, the national average of how many transactions a basic realtor will do is 4 to 6 a year.
Yeah, I did know that.
And
it's crazy.
if you can only do 4 to 6, the fees alone will crush you.
Yes, absolutely.
Why are you even playing this game?
I mean, I don't understand how you can live.
And you got people like I did 50-something myself last year.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing that many, then, and they're only, there's a finite number happening in our market.
Right, especially now.
You're doing, then there are realtors who are doing none. They did none.
During the biggest boom in seller history.
So they're not paying they're not covering their expenses.
Yeah.
Because it ain't cheap to have a license as a realtor. So.
Well, and I don't think people understand that. I mean, listen, we can make as much money as a lot of other professions in the industry, and we certainly can get in for less money than they went to grad school, right?
Yeah, oh, of course. Yes.
But the ongoing fees, I mean, to get in, depending on what time of the year you jump in, it can be $2,500, $2,000. It just depends on the time of year you hop. But the ongoing, I mean, what is every October you're getting hammered for at least 600 or 700. I mean, from RAR. I mean, it's just, and it's the MLS constant something is all the time, right? Because all the money that they think they see on the CD, well, that's not all going to mama. And then whatever mama does get, government's getting 25 to 30% of that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth.
You think about what your dessert, the size of your dessert looks like at one restaurant versus another. When you go to one restaurant and you order a piece of pie, it might be massive, right? You get
it could be a Shindigs thing, right?
Shindigs. Yeah, that's
12
great.
layers and the whole nine.
Great. That's a great comparison. And then you go over to some other restaurant. And
it's like this little
a little tiny wedge that, you can't even get a scoop. The ice cream falls right off the side immediately. So that's the way it is.
That's the comparison.
Yeah, that's the comparison. So can I tell you about another scam?
Ooh, you're just full of fun stuff.
This one rocked me a little bit.
Okay.
This one rocked me. So I had just recorded a podcast here in the studio.
With the lovely Studio 77.
Studio 77.
And the boys.
Yeah.
Yep. And
Eddie and the Michael.
I was leaving here, and I had, because I silenced my phone while I'm recording, and I had a voicemail. And it was from this man who said, "Hi, I'm Sergeant so-and-so from Chesterfield County Police Department," which is where I live. And he said, "I need to speak with you immediately about a very important matter." So I thought it was regarding a client, because I did have a client in some trouble. So
that's another story. We'll have her back, because it sounds like there's layers
here.
Yes,
there could be like an onion. So I'm like, oh, it must be about that. incident. So, and I call back the number,
of course,
and he doesn't answer, but there's a voicemail that says, "Hi, you've reached Chesterfield County Police Department," and it was something like Consumer something Division, and it all sounded very legit, right? Yeah. So I left a message, and then they called back, but I was in an appointment, but it showed on my caller ID that it was Chesterfield County Police Department. So I thought, oh, interesting. So I called Chesterfield County Police Department's non-emergency number directly and said, I'm trying to reach this sergeant. And they said, oh, we don't have anybody here by that name anymore. Anymore. And I said, well, he left a message. And she said, well, I'm not sure that's real. And I said, well, she said, what do you do for a living? And I said, I'm a realtor. She said, we had a realtor call here the other day saying somebody had called them and was demanding some money. So she said, I'd be careful. I said, okay. So a couple hours later, the guy calls me back. So I figure, all right.
Persistence. You got to give him that.
Yeah, I'm going to have some fun.
Yes.
So I answer the phone. So this is the scam. He said, you were picked for grand jury duty.
And you didn't show up.
And you're being held in contempt of court, and you have two options. Okay? You either show up down at the county clerk's office where you will face the judge and you will need to pay a fine.
Okay.
Or we can take care of this right over the computer on Zoom. I can have you Zoom in with the judge. The judge will listen to your excuse as to why you weren't there, and you'll just pay a fine. So
this is pretty elaborate.
Yes. So he said, you're actually being charged with two charges. He had the statute numbers that he read off to me over the phone. I said, I don't know what you're talking about, but I was not selected with jury. And then he raised his voice and said, are you calling me a liar? And
yes,
we will come to your house and arrest you.
Please
do.
Please do.
So he went on and on and on. And he said to me, now this is what freaked me out a little bit, and I could see this would freak out
a lot of
realtors. He said, aren't you a realtor, Miss Pretty? And I said, yes, I am. And he said, you do know that if you are charged with a crime, that that your license will be suspended. You are aware of the DPOR rules. Now, for those of you who don't know, DPOR is the Department of Professional and Occupational Regulations.
And if you have a felony, I mean, there are, it's a no-no to be a realtor if you've got felonies.
Yes, you and even a misdemeanor, all that has to be reported.
Right, and if it's not reported timely,
suspension.
Yes.
So
that raised the hair on the back of your neck, didn't it?
He knew all of that. And then for a split second, I thought, oh my God, is this real? And all the stuff he was quoting to me, he gave me his, I said, look, I know you're a scammer. He's like, how dare you? This is who I am. And by the way, I Googled the guy's name, and he used to be a police officer with
And this is what he's doing now in his retirement.
Well, no, he's pretending to be that person.
Gotcha.
He's not actually that person. So anyway, long story short, the guy did eventually hang up on me when I told him I was aware of everything going on. But I called the police department back and let them know.
This is still, and this is serious what he's...
Yeah, and this is what he's saying. And they called me back. They had they actually had a sergeant call me back and ask me everything that was being said.
Right.
And I said, did you all know that they're spoofing your non-emergency number? Like, it came up on my caller ID, and it is identical to your non-emergency number. And she said, no, we were not aware of that. That's a new piece of information. And she said, you are the third realtor to call this week with this scam.
Ouch.
So
I've been scammed with the Dominion Power thing.
What's that?
Have you heard about that one?
No.
This is not as sexy as what you've got going on. Is way cooler. And this happened a couple of times, and I there, profanities did come out of my lips because I, called,
Sure.
said you're a scammer. But what they do is they do it a lot, especially to the elderly, because I watch Next Door and they'll, that app, your neighborhood community, and a lot of stay at homes are being hammered with this. What they do is they call you and they say, you've missed your payment or whatever it is on Dominion Power. But if you'll pay them over the phone, you're going to have your power cut off in 30 minutes. I mean, that's kind of what they're.
30 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Your power's getting ready to be cut off. I need, you need to pay, bring this bill, So I would go. So I paid this by automatic draft. Well, you've missed a payment, I said, and they'll go, well, what's your account? They'll ask me my account number. I'm like, well, you should tell me. You're Dominion Power. Don't you have my account up in front of you?
You tell me.
And then
bitch.
As soon as I mess with them for a few minutes, then, I do let fly some creative language, and then they hang up.
Sure.
But when I look on Nextdoor and you see people respond, they get nervous, they get super concerned because majority of people, pay their bills on time, want to follow the rules, want to, law. And when you disrupt that narrative in their head and they think like yourself, did I miss a court date? I mean, you're starting to question yourself. It really unnerves them. And every time
I would freak out.
What?
I would freak out if someone said I missed a court date.
Oh, well, absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. But listen, if once he said, we'll come to your house, I would be like, I will be on the front porch in my black rocker. There will be a double barrel across my lap. Come and get me. Let's go.
I mean,
I would have said that all day. That's the kind of person I am.
I freaked out. I was in a rental car and I got, I think I got tagged with the light.
Like that third brake light?
No. The
Easy Pass.
when you're speeding in certain states, they have the
sounds like.
Yeah, I know. The cameras.
Yeah.
And so when you see this big flash, you think it's you or whatever. Like, oh, was I speeding? Did I miss a light? What happened?
Right.
And it wasn't in a normal area that I knew. And so now I'm thinking, well, great. I have something out there that probably has a ticket that I don't know where it's, if it was me or not.
Right.
I was in Florida. And, so every morning I'm thinking,
they're coming to get you. The po-po is coming to get you, Michael.
Bad boys.
His local photographer, YouTube host, his the front pages of business.
And I get pulled over and I'm like, oh, you have a suspended license. What? Like,
there'll be a white Tesla racing down 288. Go get it. Instead of a white Bronco, it's the white Tesla.
Well, my poor mom, who's 88, has been the victim of so many scammers, horribly so, to the tune of almost $40,000, which I have been able to rescue and get back. And there are so many different types of sophisticated scams. And what I've learned through this process, and I'm going to do a podcast all about these different scams so that you can help educate your parents and know what to look out for. But what I've learned is when a scammer does have a success with you, they sell your information on the black market.
And so others come to you.
The phone really starts to ring for the elderly once one thing's happened, and they feed off of the fear and the panic because they've already had one thing happen, so it only stands to reason that somebody else has gotten their information. But yeah, I mean, my mother's credit cards were stolen, her Social Security payment was taken, and $20,000 out of her retirement account was taken, all by scammers, but I was able to get all of it back.
That is amazing.
oh, you got all of it back?
All of it.
Wow.
So is it because the transition, you would stop the wire before?
Here's 2 hints. Number 1, use a local bank.
Absolutely.
I use a local bank and made them aware. My mother has dementia. I made them aware of her situation.
Right.
So whenever something looked suspicious, they called me immediately.
They're like, this is not coming out of her account on her.
And obviously, I have a power of attorney. They're not just calling me just
out of the blue. No, of course.
Village Bank.
Yeah.
I do have power of attorney. Village Bank didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
So they would call me immediately. So I was able to rescue several things because of that. But I also got my mother to agree to give me access to her bank account so that just for
you
the
can
purpose
monitor.
of monitoring and watch. And I also included her retirement accounts. I could go in online, watch her retirement accounts. But I would only check it on business days. So Monday through Friday, I would look at her accounts. That's it. But on a Sunday night, I was sitting there watching a movie, and something just, with my kids, and something just told me, popped in my head, why don't you check the account?
Yeah.
So I grabbed my laptop and I pulled it up, and I realized 20 grand was missing to the penny. So I immediately called her financial planner, and he said, well, she put in a request to have it transferred. I said, no, she didn't. He said, well, there's nothing I can do to stop it, to get it back. The only thing I can do is to change where it's being dropped. I can change that account.
Okay.
And so we were able to circumvent it in the air.
Whoa.
And so you got it sent like maybe to something
To my account.
to your account, then you replenished it.
yes.
You put it back in.
That was smart.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it was like within minutes.
And to be honest, right, because, and the title company I use, Aurora Title in the West End, it's not happened to me, but they had if you can get that transaction soon enough, if you're notified of it quick enough, you can stop that wire. So typical, all the wiring fraud that's gone on in the last few years. They had a couple who sold their home, were buying the next day buying the new house. All that money was to be wired, the proceeds, blah, blah, blah. And the couple gets a odd email saying this is the wiring instructions, and it goes to
Yeah, that happened to one of my sellers.
I mean, just to nowhere.
Yeah.
And they're on the phone with Aurora in tears because, it was a chunk, right?
Yeah.
And Aurora was able to stop that wire and kill it before it got to its end space.
Which can be hard to do because it.
And listen, that's fortunate. It's not like that. It was a sure thing. Them stopping that wire wasn't sure. They just were doing the best they could, just like,
Mm-hmm. It depends on the bank.
Yeah, number one.
Some banks have longer time periods
of transfer
than others. So, and which can be annoying to us, the ones
absolutely.
with a longer time frame when we're trying to do a back-to-back. But in a situation like that, then you're grateful that the bank has the longer time frame. But,
right.
But yeah, if you are the child of an older parent, I really urge you to have these discussions with your parents about somehow involving you to have access to their bank accounts so that you can check them, include retirement, and also consider using a local bank instead of a big box bank.
Because you're a number.
Exactly. And that's made all the difference in the world. Otherwise, my mother would be out 40 grand right now.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's
I
crazy.
have learned so much. And, you
have an
FBI.
education in this that you didn't even want an education
I didn't
in.
want it. I've called the police. I've called FBI. They don't care because literally this happens
Constantly.
a million times a day. They don't have the staff, the people to follow.
And that's why this
small
is so
potatoes.
prevalent. That's why this, right.
Yeah.
This is why this goes on and on and on and on. It's because a lot of times they're out of the country.
Well, I was going to say, there's a YouTuber that's worked for NASA that now he has his own channel. He does like science stuff, and he's an awesome guy. He does a lot of cleaning the earth and all that stuff. Young guy, and he teamed up with another YouTuber to investigate overseas call centers and stuff like that. And they've had 2 of them shut down in the past year, like
Nice.
mega ones. And so it's just like crazy.
And they're getting more sophisticated.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I want to say I was still at Keller Williams. They started targeting real estate transactions. You know what I mean? And you had a seller who lost a chunk. I had a buyer, a cash buyer, an investor who, because English is his second language, when he got an email about transferring the proceeds 2 weeks, 3 weeks, way early, he calls me and he says, why are they wanting this money now? And I said, what are you talking about? They had gone in and I was with Keller, they had mirrored the title company's email, my email, and they had seen us talking. They had found us, and I had seen the preliminary CD, or at the time it was the HUD one. And I was like, that's the exact number that's on that. So I called the title company and said, have you asked for money? And they're like, no. And I called Elvin immediately. I said, you send no money, ignore those. And then they started blowing up his phone. Like, if you don't do this, we're canceling the transaction. I mean, all this nonsense. But he was getting ready to lose six figures because he was paying cash for a little brick rancher down on Hopkins Road.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? And had he not trusted me, this is where this is where we're going to bring this full circle. When you talk about a local bank, I'm talking about local title, local lender, be local people. You know, stop with the internet stuff when you are doing the largest transaction of your life. You know what I mean? It's when it's us that are helping you, protect you from these things.
Yes.
Right? And if it weren't for his trust in me, he would have wired $100,000 plus and it would be gone.
Right. Definitely. Never to be seen again.
Never to be seen again. Never to be seen again. And, and I'm grateful for that. But I mean, we had a spat of it back at that, 5 or 6 years. It really was quite common. And now all the title companies and all the closing attorneys have changed how they do wires.
Yes. So now they've had to evolve to other scams, other ways of
messing with real estate.
Like, God, if they would put all of their brilliance and energy
into doing something constructive
for good,
my God,
we could solve so many problems in the world because they're brilliant and so sophisticated.
But listen, we're solving a lot of shit right here.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. I don't have the brain. Like, I don't even understand this land scam that I got.
I don't even know why they're doing it.
Where do they make the money? At what point do they make the money? I don't get it. I don't understand the end game, but
because a good title company or attorney, will catch.
Yeah.
That's going to get caught. And you've got to come in, or, they have to send a deed for you. There's a deed package that has to be executed.
Mm-hmm. I just don't.
Is it just for fun? They're just trying to, what is it?
Yeah, I don't know how they get the money in the end because they have to sign. I don't know. It has to be notarized. I just don't get it. I don't know. Some states maybe don't require wet signatures for closings, like we still do in Virginia. Maybe
this has been going on a long time, especially the time I've been here, and you've been in real estate a good 5 years longer than I have. This whole concept of being paperless is never going to happen because I do believe the more electronic we become, the more vulnerable we become to scam.
Oh, definitely.
That's a fact. And this is too big of a deal. This is anyone's largest asset. Mm-hmm. Quit messing with, and I think I'm going to make that the theme for today. Stop messing with these internet companies. Use local professionals who live in your community and are as invested in the community as you want to be.
Exactly. Yeah. You're choosing lenders who the underwriter is in Seattle and the loan processor
is in
Texas and the person who originated it is in Boston. They're just shuffling you along in their little internet world, and they don't care.
I have no place to go if there's trouble in the River City. Okay,
right. But your lender is here. Their underwriter is here.
I can go to the office,
and you can put your thumb on them and hold them accountable.
Because they have to face me at different events that we all swim in this this pool together. Right. And the reality is, every transaction that I've ever had that was difficult, especially as a listing agent,
yes,
the lender was an internet.
Yep.
Lender.
Agreed.
Every time.
Yep.
Because they will pass that file along. I can't get anybody on the phone. Mm-hmm. I can't get anybody to respond. I can't get anybody to be held accountable. And then you're at the mercy of the agent on the other side. And a lot of times.
Well, how many times have you heard when you do get a hold of somebody and you'll say, I'm trying to get a hold of Roberta. And they're like, oh, well, Roberta doesn't work for us anymore.
She's gone.
Yeah. Within the 30-day period, you'll have 3 different people whose
hands are now on this file.
Yeah. Yep. With those companies.
And it's ridiculous. And I don't care what discount or courtesy you think you're getting on the rate.
Isn't worth it.
I don't care what you think I had a couple, their very first purchase was probably $500,000. They both were attorneys, smart people. They flipped from my local real lender to, an unnamed internet-based lender. When I got that CD, they paid 1.25% more to have no closing costs on a $500,000 loan. Do some math for yourself,
Yes.
peoples. That is obscene.
Yeah, that's
Obscene.
$7,500.
It's ridiculous. To save these hypothetical closing costs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Stop letting them drag it. You're being catfished.
Yep.
You're being catfished. That's exactly what's happening here. Stop letting them drag you into that nonsense. Work with local lenders who have a vested interest in this community, who are in it because they want to see you as a homeowner get the best rate or the best that they can do for you here. But you've got to plant, if you're wanting to plant your seed here in Midlothian, use a Midlothian lending company, fabulous realtor like Beth Pretty, people who are homeowners and invested in this community already.
Yeah. Well, if you want the dollar store experience, no offense, dollar store, because you
serve a purpose,
you serve a
but
purpose,
not
for sure,
a lot.
But if you want the dollar store experience for your house,
Go for it.
go for it. But I personally would want the Nordstrom experience for my house.
Thank you.
For my most important asset. So
There it is.
yeah.
See there? You see why I have her on today? Do you see why I brought my sister on here? So before we end, and I love you guys, and I'm drinking the Eagle Rare. Thank you, Milton, my precious angel. Tell everybody again about your lovely new podcast, and I hope I get to be a guest on said podcast too.
I think you might get to be. Talk Pretty Real Estate Podcast. It's anywhere you listen to a podcast, you can find it. So Google that. And
Which she does a fantastic job.
well,
You know that.
I didn't have to say much to her in direction, like you too, but like she knocked it out of the park.
well, thank you. And we talk about some different stuff. So it's no duplication here. So
No.
we talk
It's all,
about different
it
stuff.
doesn't matter. I want you to be nothing but hugely successful.
Right back at you.
Mwah. Bye, my
Oh, I
precious.
got the bourbon right
Oh,
there,
she got the
too.
bourbon. I just blew bourbon in her face. I love you, my people. Come and see us again. Thank you for visiting us today at Real Estate in Bourbon. We can't wait to see you again. And subscribe. See you next time.
You've just been listening to Talk Pretty with host Beth Pretty. If you have questions or would like to suggest a topic for an upcoming episode, reach out to Beth on Instagram or Facebook at Pretty Properties VA. For more information about Beth and her team, visit prettypropertiesva.com. The Talk Pretty Real Estate Podcast is a production of Studio 77. Visit rvastudio77.com for more information.